hold hand 'neath the wing of the bluebird as she sings.
And we're back. Welcome to another edition of Crossroads Comedy Project with Ish and Josh. I'm Josh Sardam.
And I'm Ish Wash.
And we're coming to you live from Willie's Locally Known here in Lexington, Kentucky. The fabulous Willie's Locally Known that used to be a Show-Me's. Today, at our show, we're actually joined with a local celebrity, and this guy has been a comic for 3 decades.
Where is he? Whoa, I blew it out.
It's all right. This guy's been around a long time.
Who's that guy? Where is he?
Please welcome to the show, Scott Wilson.
Well, thank you, guys, for having me. This is awful nice.
Oh, you're very welcome. Scott is currently, he's the MC at Comedy Off Broadway. He is
currently.
Yeah,
we'll see how that's a day-to-day thing.
This guy's had a pretty starred career. I mean, he's traveled with Bill Hicks, Jon Stewart, Billy Gardell, Tim Wilson. I mean, you could probably the list goes on and on and on.
Well, yeah, and a lot of guys you don't even know about that were like that got hot real early. And there was some crazy stuff that went on, and I don't know, and I don't even remember their names.
Yeah.
But I know they were hot early.
Right.
And they did a lot of stuff.
And you started comedy in the early 80s, right?
Yes, I did.
82, was it?
Well, yeah. There really wasn't a whole lot of outlets here in Lexington, right, as I was growing up for comedy. So when I was in college, I had some stage time venue stuff that I could work on, just kind of off the cuff and random.
Sure.
And I took advantage of that, and I did some other MC work as far as I actually MC'd what do they call that? They synchronized swimming at EKU.
Really?
I MC'd a synchronized swimming.
Was that before you did comedy?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and of course I tried to interject the comedy as best I could.
Yeah.
But there was so much echo, you had to talk real slow.
Oh boy.
In the venue where the pool was.
Right.
But it was fun, and it got me. That actually, I did well enough on that one when there was a couple of mishaps that I handled. Impromptu well enough to where they went, oh, we want you to do some other stuff. So that was good for me. So that helped me out with learning how to be, up in front of people and MC and
Sure.
how to handle stuff like that. So it was really good.
Why did you want to start doing comedy? Like, what made you want to do it?
Because I'm a freak.
All right.
And no, I just look. It was just all for me. When George Carlin and the 2 other people that came down the steps at Saturday Night Live in the mid '70s, in '74 or whatever, when they came down those steps and went and did their shtick right in front of that sold it for me. I was right there, and I was in tune with all of it too. I was in tune with the Dean Martin roast. I was in tune with all the things that were happening. Carol Burnett was, that was genius.
Oh, yeah.
All the other things, even Donnie and Marie and Sonny and Cher and all that stuff, were just doing comedy.
Like the variety shows.
Yeah, and which is sadly
are gone.
Yeah. And I don't even understand why that nobody would. I don't get it. I mean, our variety shows now are. Some British guy telling people they suck.
Yeah, pretty much.
And it's just
it's all singing competition.
It's not the same, and it shouldn't be. It should be. We should have variety shows like we should have because that was entertainment.
Yeah, but comedy in the '80s isn't the same as it is now. I mean, not even close.
Why would you say that?
Well, in the '80s, that's when it was really up and coming. I don't know. I really enjoy watching.
You mean comedy itself, or just the business?
Both. In fact, the business has changed.
Well, yeah, sure, yeah. The business changed all the way through, yes. Comedy in the 80s was all these people. I mean, for me, it was perfect because it was a boom. They put a little comedy club Friday, Saturday nighter or whatever in every little mid-sized town in America.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, they didn't have enough comics.
Right.
So for me, it was great. I mean, they just needed warm bodies at that point. They didn't even care what I had to offer.
Sure.
But it gave me a chance to learn how to do it, and it was great, and it just slowly built it built for me, right? Like the first year I was in the business, like in 1984, I guess.
Okay.
We'll call it that. I worked like 12 weeks that year.
Right.
And it was weird, I just worked here and there, and I had some comic friends that helped me because they saw me at open mic nights, right, which were few and far between. And then the next year it was 24 weeks, and then the next year it was 36 weeks, and then the next year it was everything 50,
all you could handle.
Yeah, 52 weeks is all you got.
Right.
And so, and at one point, I was at, the way I figured it was like 92 weeks that I had to pick from.
Wow.
And I only had, if I wanted to take a week off here and there, I only had like 42, 44 weeks.
Yeah.
That I could do. So it was all good toward the end of the 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, and I mean, what a great problem to have, though. You have all this work that you can take, and you can pick and choose.
Well, I'm married, so there's all those problems.
Yeah, but speaking of married, now you were a touring comedian that always toured with your wife.
Yes.
And I think now at the time.
Well, no, I didn't always tour with my wife. I toured by myself till 1988.
Okay.
And basically, once it got to the point where I was going out 6 weeks at a time and coming home for a week and then going 6 weeks at a time, that's not much of a marriage.
No, you're right.
And as much as we wanted to make things work, I figured out a way that she could go with me. And then she turned out to make it the way, right, that she took control, just like wives do.
Yeah.
And so she ended up being like my booking agent.
Sure.
And she ended up being my driver. She ended up being my, whatever, nursemaid when I was sick and all that stuff. And it was great for me. That was, it's made our marriage. We went about 5 years, 6 years almost, just doing that. And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful thing for me because we'll never forget that.
Yeah, no, I mean, you guys built a foundation that you were able, and at the time, was that a normal thing that happened, or were you guys pretty much the enigma?
We were the enigma at that point. I don't know if enigma is the right word, but we were the difference. And the good thing was that I had a good enough reputation, and then when she actually came with me and everything, she made my reputation even better.
Sure.
We were just solid, and we did the job, and I got a lot of work just because I was solid, right, and I didn't screw around.
Right. I mean, you weren't one of these guys. The reason why you were enigma is because at the time a lot of comics were on a lot of drugs. And they were showing up late, or they were going over their times, and you weren't that guy.
And it was like that was kind of, the mantle that you had to be weirder than the next guy.
Sure.
And that's really just not the way the business works.
Right.
See, I always assumed Scott was always on drugs. So is that not true?
No.
Oh.
Well, I mean, if you've got a broad spectrum of what drugs should be.
Well, I've always.
Yeah. Well,
if
that's the case, yeah. Then.
I mean, I've had my share of beer. If that's what you're saying.
Yeah. And how Peggy made it better. I remember you were telling me stories how, like, when you guys would go to, like, the condos and whatnot, she would always, like, clean it.
She would clean it, she would just do her thing, and she'd take care of me. And because of that,
right,
the club owners and the people that were in charge of those things, they noticed it. And it was like we were kings,
yeah,
and queens.
Right.
And Peggy was treated just as well or better than me.
Yeah.
In these places. Because of that, because just people suck.
Yeah.
And comics that go in and just piss on the walls and do whatever else they do, right?
Sure.
It didn't happen when I was around,
right?
Because I had Peggy,
right?
And then there was times when we just I had to tell other comics, You know, you can shit in your bed, but don't do it while you're around me.
Right. A couple comics that you had to have conversations with. I remember you told me a good story about Bill Hicks.
Bill Hicks?
Bill had some.
I got a chance to spend a couple of weeks with Bill Hicks back in the '80s. This is before Peggy was with me, but it was Bill Hicks had a reputation for being, a drunkard, and then even into drugs and all that kind of stuff too. And that probably was well deserved.
Yeah.
Because he was.
Yeah.
And. But him and I got along famously. I mean, it was just the first time we wound up in Greensboro, North Carolina, where they had this wonderful club called Twofers in this little mall that was like more of a galleria kind of thing, but it was just tiny.
Yeah.
And it had a bookstore and some clothing stores, and then it had this place, Twofers, which was basically a restaurant that they turned into a comedy club, and he did a lot of catering and stuff as well. And he was kind of a high-strung guy that owned it, and we went in the first time, and I told Bill, I said, when I first met him, we were at the condo together. Basically, what clubs would do is instead of giving us hotel rooms, they'd rent an apartment somewhere, right?
Right.
And then a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment somewhere. So they would just put us up in that, and of course you're basically sleeping on a bed that's on beer cases, and there might be a dresser, a change, which you wouldn't use anyway.
Right.
And but they have a kitchen too, and that's fine. And they threw a couch in there that probably was somebody's couch from 1979 or whatever.
Sure.
And they'd give us TV, and then mostly they'd give us cable.
Right.
They would give us cable so that maybe we could stay calm all day. And watch it, but when I first met Bill, he his reputation kind of preceded him, so as being kind of a drunkard and a wild guy. And I had to tell him, I said, look, I don't, this is the thing, I don't care what you do. You can screw the TV and throw it out the window. I don't care what you do, as long as my name doesn't come up.
Right.
That's as long as my name doesn't come up, we're fine with everything.
Right.
And we had the greatest time. And he was just so. I don't even know how to, genius. He was, but it was just so. And I don't even know if it was easy for him or not, but. It was just so smooth, and it just made so much sense, and he could do. There was no way that I could ever. I would watch it and go, I'm just not that guy. I can't.
Right.
I got to do the whole setup punchline thing, where he's working through this whole things that just made crowds just go crazy.
Sure.
And but apparently. He liked me well enough because he said at the middle of the week, he said, I want you to come up and do some improv with me. And I go, I don't know if we're going to do that or not. And he goes, yeah. He goes, here's the thing. Because he'd do Elvis. He'd do Elvis back when you could still do Elvis jokes and everybody knew what you were talking about.
Sure.
And so basically what we did was he went up and he goes, here's what's going to happen. He was just telling the audience this. He goes, I am Elvis, right? And Scott is Elvis's dead brother Aaron, who died at birth. And so we're just dueling Elvises, basically,
right.
Just making up stuff. But I had the biggest time with that. It was so much fun, and I didn't even care what the audience was doing at that point. I don't even know if they liked it or not.
Right.
This particular place, though, too, had a 2-drink. I guess it was a 2-drink. You get 2 free drinks per comic per show.
Wow.
Right. So Bill and I, once we realized this, we started buying our own drinks, and I was basically drinking beer at the time. I don't know what he was drinking and doing in his room.
Right.
I'm pretty sure he was doing stuff in his room.
Right.
Because then he would come out and be all
I'll say it. He was doing cocaine.
He was doing, yeah,
It was all pepped up.
It's
he was
fine.
being all agitated, and
It's well
And then
documented.
we're watching. I know,
Yeah.
but he kept it away from me because
Yeah.
I told him to.
Right.
And I went up to the bartender when I go, now we can bank our drinks, right? And he goes, well, yeah. I said, so if I don't get 2 drinks on my, free drinks, and I could have 4 tomorrow if I wanted to. And he goes, well, yeah, I guess that's right.
Okay.
So we got to Sunday night on this one gig in Greensboro, right? And we had been banking our drinks all week. And we had the same bartender, so he knew that's what we're doing.
Right.
So when he goes, all right, you guys, you've been banking your drinks all week. And then we go, yeah. It was like after the show, there was still a lot of people around. The staff, they pretty much closed everything down. There was still a lot of friends and people around. And we went, okay, here's the deal. We had 7 shows. We have 2 drinks per show. And there's 2 of us, right? So I don't know if you do the math there. It was what we said was, we want 36 Long Island iced teas.
Jesus.
And write them up on the bar there.
And what the hell would you do with those?
Well, we had to give them to everybody.
I was about to say,
I was
I
there.
hope
We
you
were
weren't
because
drinking.
I think I drank 2 of them, but that was
Alcohol
crazy.
poisoning. Ended up in the hospital that
Yeah,
night.
you don't want to mix
36.
alcohol and cocaine.
My God. No,
But anyway-
he did, and that's why he's not with us anymore. Though.
Well, we had a great time, and we gave them all away. We just,
Sure.
but then the owner came out. He was like, and then Bill was like, back then it was if you had a good week, you get bonuses. I don't even think that exists anymore. But as a matter of fact, I know it doesn't. You'd walk back to get paid at the end of the night to the office, and they go, "We had a great week, man. Here's an extra $100." Great week, and especially for the headliners. And Bill happened to ask this guy, right, as he's back in the kitchen, right, and he's paying us. And he is actually taking a meat cleaver to prime rib. And this dude is hitting it 1 inch at a time.
Damn.
Every time from the top of his head down to the...
So he's good.
And he's good.
He's good.
And Bill goes, we had a pretty good week. Don't you think we ought to get a bonus? And the guy just went... And the next one was, boom! No bonuses for you. This guy freaked out. And then after that is when we went to the bar and ordered, 36 Long Island iced teas. And he really freaked out after that point. So now the club was open for, about a year or 2 after that. And I got a chance to go back and work it as a feature act. And as soon as I walked in the door, the second time I was there, the owner was there going, no drinks.
No drinks. No banking.
No drinks. And I go, is that just for me, or is that just... And he goes, yeah, it's just for you. And you can drink all you want, but I don't...
Now, when did you start doing radio? Because I know you were a disc jockey for a little while. When did you start doing that?
Disc jockey's not a term in which actually, prevails anymore. It's just that everything just plays, and guys talk in between it. It's nobody's spinning any records.
Was it a disc jockey when you started?
No.
Okay.
No, I actually started in radio. I came back here in 1995 to do the house MC job, and that was all fine and good. And finally, I got an opportunity. Lee Cruz actually was offered a traffic job for a subcontractor that was doing traffic for one of the local radio stations. And he called me, and he said, you might want to talk to this guy, because I gave him your name. And I called this dude, and he was like a junior vice president or whatever of this Metro Networks area. And they were putting in the subcontractor traffic into the town. And I said, well, yeah, I'd be interested in doing this. And he goes, well, first of all, I need to know if you can fly in a small plane. if you can fly in a small plane and not be, too weirded out over it, then you can do this. And second of all, he goes, what's your background? I go, I really don't have a background. I was a comic, He goes, and this guy was in Orlando, and I said, well, I lived in Orlando for several years, and he goes, well, really, where'd you work? And I told him where I worked, and he goes, well, what's your deal? And I go, well, I used to do, I had a little catchphrase called everybody drink. He goes, I know you. And he offered me the job right then and there.
Nice.
I went to the airport 2 days later, and I got in the plane, and it didn't make me crazy, even though it should have.
I mean, you're 6'6".
I'm 6'6", yeah, and I was sitting in the front seat at the time, and then so we took over, and then it got a little bigger, and then some of the other stations got involved in this where we could do traffic, because traffic's apparently a big deal. I don't get it, traffic
Right.
and weather being such a big damn wheel, but. So I ended up doing that for like 3 years or so, and apparently it got so big, right?
Yeah.
I actually went to a meeting at the radio station where they were doing the Q ratings for all these people in town, and I don't want to really name any names at that point, but it's all the names that are still around.
Sure.
For the most part, and they had this bar graph that they were showing on how so and so was up here, and everybody went yay, and then so and so was up here, and they went yay, and then so and so was here, and they went yeah, and then mine actually went to the ceiling and across back,
Damn.
from the whatever they were showing up on the screen. And a couple of days later, I got a call from the country station that was putting together a new morning team, and they wanted. So that was a little bit of a coup, where I had to actually, sneak around a little bit and get that job. But that was fun. That was country music, and I wasn't real familiar with it, but I got familiar with it.
Sure.
Then I got Taylor Swift. I met her before anybody knew who she was.
Right.
And all these guys,
Charlie
big and rich. Charlie Daniels, I've had several meetings with him.
How's he as just a personal guy? Is he pretty personal?
He's great. He's just an old man. I mean, it's
old
like
country boy.
he's just an old man. I mean, he's just like he got chewing on the gum. Me and Mama, we went over to whatever.
So you were actually hosting a
Just play the hits. I don't care.
So you were hosting an actual show on the country station?
Well, yeah, I was part of a morning show that was.
Okay.
Where have you been, Ish?
Oh, you were famous before I was even born.
That's
Just
true.
so you know.
That's true.
I saw Ish in the grocery store a week or so ago.
He was
looking at mushrooms. I don't know what the hell he was doing. I go, shouldn't you be in the couscous section?
I turned to my left, and he's hovering over me. I swear to God.
Yeah. I saw you from 20 feet away, and I went right up. I just
staring at the mushrooms, and I looked to my left, and he's hovering over me. I'm like, holy shit, what are you doing? Scared the crap out of me.
He's a tall guy.
Well,
And you ended up
like,
catching a
you
butt
don't
later
even
that
you
day.
don't even know what you're doing there.
I'm trying to eat healthy.
And
I'm trying to eat mushrooms.
he was dressed to impress that day too. By the way, I'm just.
That's Ish. That's
I
Ish.
don't know why.
You always dress to impress.
Do I?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're coming to do comedy tonight, so I mean, you just,
I'm trying to blend in.
That's right.
you're trying to blend in.
I'm trying not to wear any fancy watches.
Yeah. So you did radio for how long?
I did, 10 years.
About 10 years.
10 years. That was kind of the idea when I took the MC job at Comedy Off Broadway. The idea when I would branch into something else because, you do something. And it took a while, but it ended up working out for
Yeah,
a
no,
while.
absolutely. I mean, people that go to Comedy Off Broadway, they all know you. I mean, it's not like you're someone that people don't know. But
They don't know me.
Well, that's why we're doing this podcast today, so they can get to know you a little bit better. But Jordan Hawley's the current owner of Comedy Off Broadway.
Right.
Jeff Gilstrap was the original owner.
Yes.
Give me your thoughts on Jeff.
Jeff Gilstrap was a wonderful guy that had this vision of comedy, and without getting in too much detail about it, he put together a group of investors and brought in comedy on Broadway.
Right.
Back in 1986-ish,
Yeah.
7, whatever. I'd already, like I told you earlier, I was already on the road and going.
Yeah.
You know, and did it without a home club. I didn't have a home club. You know, most comics have this club where they, they get started and they do, but I didn't have that.
Sure.
And so when we got to the point where they were open, I just went, yeah. And he would. That's when they still did road MCs.
Right.
And so you'd make a little money being a road MC. So they'd bring it because they hadn't cultivated any talent, because there was no club there.
Right.
Not like what we're doing now. And so I thought that was great because he's like, well, you can come in and MC. Even though I wasn't doing that particular job on the road,
right.
It was good for me because I would be able to come home, right, and make a little money and do some shows and take care of business and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
For a week, and then get back out to it. But and then we went along for about a year or so, and he goes, because I was thinking, well, here's what I'll do. I'll go 4 times a year, MC me, at these specific times a year,
right?
And I'll be happy with that, right?
Yeah.
And then, but he said, no, you got to feature next time, and I go, I don't want to do that. That just means every 15 months,
right.
I'm here every 15 months. That's not what I want.
Right.
And then we even came into the position where he goes, well, I'm going to headline you next time. And I go, no, I don't want to. And he goes, you're the only person to ever say I don't want to headline. And I go, no, because now that's a year in 5 months.
Right.
And I don't want to do that, but I ended up doing what he wanted me to do. So he was a great guy. He was really shrewd. He knew what he was doing. He got hooked up with a booking agent out of Louisville that really probably wasn't his best fit. I wish that he would have done things a little bit more like Jordan is doing them now.
Yeah.
But we didn't know any better at
Sure.
that point. And
comedy was still in its its heyday, but people were still trying to work the system and figure out the ways that things were done.
And him and I had our arguments, about things, and there was this grand plan about having a club in Louisville and then having one in Cincinnati area as well, and the Golden Triangle is what we called it, and that would have been just awesome.
Amazing.
To have that power to book somebody and say, we're going to give you 3 weeks. We're going to make sure you get everywhere. We'll have somebody to take you around.
Yeah.
We'll have hotels for you, and to get that kind of a power over, and then have that just kind of rotate through like a hurricane. Just all the time. It was a perfect vision, and it never came to fruition, but that's the way it should have been.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like a funny bone kind of thing or an improv kind of thing where they just wanted to take over the earth. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was just like we just wanted these 3. That's all we wanted.
Yeah.
And that we just wanted to make it happen, so we could bring in powerful people, comedians and performers, and make it happen like that in just our little region. And it didn't happen, but that was one thing we were working towards. And he passed away a little too early, and unfortunately, and it didn't come to fruition. But sad because there's a guy who enjoyed what he was doing.
Right.
And understood what happened. He would have understood you-ish, right? Even though nobody else does. And he would understand you, and he would, and like Lee Cruz, right? He tortured Lee. He tortured Lee as he was starting out. Because he wouldn't give him anything. And then all of a sudden, bam, he started giving him stuff, So it was just like, it was this little game he played where he just tortured him. Lee would come to me and go, what, does he hate me? Why does he hate me so much? I go, he doesn't hate you, man. Just wait.
Yeah.
Well, what's funny is I never actually met him, but I graduated high school with his son.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did you really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
I heard of him. I heard he was an interesting character, and I know his son wasn't always the prodigy of the family, but he managed. I don't know.
I'm not going there.
Yeah.
But no, I'd heard really good things about him. I would have loved to have him.
Oh, he's a great guy. I mean, him and I would just yell at each other for 1 minute about stuff. I disagreed because he was the part of the business that was the business,
right.
and I was the part of the business that was the show. You know, and so him and I disagreed on a lot of things. But it was like hey, I love you.
Right.
And
you could agree to disagree.
And this was on the golf course, so then it was
Sure.
like good shot. So we disagreed, but he knew where I was coming from on it.
Yeah.
I knew where he was coming from on it, and we just tried to make it work. But I tell you what, I'll never forget that call that I got. I mean, I was sitting in Florida where I was living at the time, and the phone rang, and that's when you actually answered the phone when it rang. And I said, and he goes, hey Scott, it's Jeff. And I go, what's going on? And he goes, tell me you hate Florida, tell me you want to come home. And I go, you might be closer to what you think is true. And he offered me the gig, and I had a 1.5-year-old son at the time, and I made my decisions.
Yeah.
And I got to see him grow up.
Yeah.
So, I was good with that.
That's crazy because I think a Garrett my age now stuck about a 1.5-year-old son.
Well, I mean, but there's so many comics that are in the business that would just be like, no, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing because I'm trying to reach this point. But you've always made decisions
But he's got to that point.
Well, I was also kind of seeing the writing on the wall where the clubs were. Some of the clubs were failing, and I went through the whole time through the 80s and early 90s, and I would always hear these stories about where comics would show up at the club and then just be closed, right?
Oh, wow.
And I never had to deal with that, and I always went, well, I guess, I don't know if I'm lucky or if I'm... But it finally happened in like 1992 where I went to Mobile, Alabama, and I actually picked up the headliner at Orlando Airport, and him and I went. He was a ventriloquist.
Oh, jeez.
He's they're just the weirdest people ever.
They really are scary as hell.
The only thing I would say about this ventriloquist was he didn't make me actually talk to the dummy.
Oh, that's a good thing.
So he was cool like that. But we got there. There's padlocks on the door. There's signs out. Thanks, Mobile. For the support.
Wow.
It's been there for years, right?
So nobody bothered to give you a phone call?
Right. No, and nobody bothered to give us a phone call, And so we're at the hotel. The hotel actually let us check in.
Of course they did.
So then we went to the hotel and we went, hey, here's what they go. We know, you guys can stay tonight. They were real nice about it. He goes, man, they owe us so much money. And,
wow.
It's like, you guys stay tonight and don't worry about it.
Well, at least you got that. I mean, goodness, that would have been really
Yeah.
shitty if they...
Well,
you guys can check in. It's like Hotel California.
The next day I was back. I got a weekend off.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah.
But I was going out for 2 and 3 weeks at a time, and I'd come back. My little 1.5-year-old son, he wouldn't even look at me for 4 or 5 days.
Right.
And then maybe the 6th day he'd kind of walk over, and when I say walking, he wasn't really walking that much, and then he'd touch my leg, And,
Yeah.
That's funny because he doesn't really look at you now.
Yeah, it's good. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think he is too.
So, a really funny story that you have with Jon Stewart has to do with a carnival ride. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I love that story. You mind?
I was working the at the time. Oh, maybe it was an improv at the time, I guess, in Atlanta with Jon Stewart, and nicest guy.
Sure.
Really is the nicest guy, and they have this green room off the stage, away from the room. You kind of got to walk through the room a little bit to get to it, but and they've got a couple of windows there, and it looks out over this Buckhead streets, right, in Atlanta, where it's nothing but bars, and it's basically. I don't think it's. I think it's local. I don't think it's too much touristy kind of thing.
Yeah.
But we just happened to be there on a weekend where there was some kind of big celebration where everybody was in the streets, and this one bar had a gyroscope in the middle of the street, where you go strap yourself in the gyroscope. You never seen this, Ish?
No.
Yeah, and you fly
What the
in
hell
circles.
is this?
Yeah,
Okay. Keep
Right.
going.
this is great.
Have you ever seen what is it? The picture of the dude where your arms are as long as your legs and all that stuff. That
We talk about the Leonardo da Vinci.
It's
thing.
Da Vinci.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Right, you've seen that, right?
Right.
Well, they've built a gyroscope around that idea,
Oh, okay.
right? And there's a gyroscope, and then there's this flat panel that would just rotate and go just different directions, right? Because of gravity and some other kind of science that I don't know about.
Centrifugal force.
Okay.
That's what it is.
We'll believe you.
I mean, but I'm better up on this than he is. I admit I don't know what the hell's going on.
I don't know what's going on.
Anyway, they put you in this, they start spinning it, and you just go around and around. But you go around and around like weird angles and stuff like
And
that,
it's
right?
supposed to be fun?
Yeah, and it's supposed to make you dizzy, and then you have a good time with it,
Get off, high five, move on.
right?
Okay.
So, and you would actually have to pay to do this. It was
Right.
like
This torture.
$5 to get on this thing.
Where is this now?
This was in Atlanta.
We're in Atlanta, and it's like right before the show. So him and I are, John Stewart and I are just going, wow, that's a big crowd out there, And they go, look at what they got to do. Well, here's a guy that's going to go up. He's going to get in. Look, they're locking him in,
Yeah.
We're going, all right, they're going to spin him around. And they just keep going, go faster, go faster. So there's somebody just hitting it, just hitting it as it comes back around every time. Just like you would a merry-go-round, right? You just keep hitting it. And then all of a sudden this person, he loses it.
Yeah. He puked.
And he just starts
Yeah, I'm
puking.
assuming.
But it's puking in the exact way of the atom
Oh.
and the crowd is like going,
Horrified.
oh, and they're just like, and you can just see this whole crowd just because it's going everywhere, right? The crowd is just disseminating away from it in a big circle.
Disgusting.
And of course, we found that to be humorous, and we were laying on the floor when they came and said, "Well, you're on," and I had to go out and do. I had tears in my eyes.
All right.
I had to go do my set. I mean, that's all I could think about. John Stewart went out and did his set, and he goes, "Here's why Scott probably didn't do as well as he should have." Is because we watched this, and he explained it because I didn't say anything about it.
That's hilarious.
And,
What year was this?
I don't know, 1991.
Yeah.
1992.
No, I wanted you to tell that story because later on, you actually got Lee to open for Jon Stewart.
Well,
And
yeah,
Yes.
there was a big deal about where cable was going to cut off Comedy Central,
yeah,
right?
Wow.
Which I actually was on Comedy Central before it was Comedy Central, when it was the Comedy Channel.
the Comedy
which
Channel, right?
That caught me by surprise one day when I was sitting in a bar because I found out that one of the comedy clubs that I'd worked at over the years had been taping every show and selling it to Comedy Central.
Right.
And so I wound up on Comedy Central, which I'd gladly put that on my resume, but
Sure.
I would have liked to have known. And
Right.
but anyway, yeah. So John and Lee Cruz was just a fledgling comic at the time. I mean, and that's probably not even true. He was doing better than that. But for some reason, I had enough balls to walk into the Singletary Center with Lee and just walk backstage, which apparently they just let us do. which I was amazed that there wasn't any security at
Right.
all. And it may have been because of me. I mean, they may have seen me and went, he's a comic.
Sure.
But I walked back. I found John in a dressing room, just, and I said, hey, I got this guy. You don't have an opening act today? And he goes, no, because they were doing this show to save Comedy Central,
Oh, okay.
is what they were trying to do. And you don't have an opening act? And he goes, no, I don't have an opening act. I go, I got one for you if you're willing to do it. He's clean. He's doing, he's good. He's funny. He won't go crazy. And he goes, yeah, whatever.
So you just let Lee go up there.
So yeah,
Nice.
well, but Lee was still part of like the radio apparatus that that was doing the promotions for it anyway
Sure.
too. So yeah, Lee got to open for Jon Stewart.
That's awesome.
Pretty awesome.
Put that
Just-
on his resume.
Just
Yeah.
for I'm sure it's
Does
on
Jon
his
Stewart still
resume.
have a show?
He actually was just on Howard Stern, and he
Okay.
was talking about how he's pretty much retired now.
That's what
He
I thought.
he looked at his bank account and he said he's got enough money. His kids were 9 and 11 at the time, and he said, I want to watch them grow up. So he stopped working at Comedy Central.
I think
basically,
that's
so-
that's a good decision. I made that decision.
Yeah.
But it wasn't about the money. It was about the time.
Right.
Yeah, I would think that he would have a ton of damn money.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And he's such a congenial guy.
But he was very funny too, and he was
Oh,
very
yeah.
clever.
Absolutely.
He did stuff on stage that I went, wow,
Yeah.
how did you ever form that
Sure.
in your brain,
Yeah.
And I watched him just work a crowd in Atlanta there for the weekend, and it was just nuts. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
And of course, we had a good time too because of off stage.
Sure.
He was just a nice guy. And then I worked with another comic there. I can't think of his damn name though. He was the guy that was in The Water Boy. He was the coach that.
Oh, you're talking about
Blake Clark.
Blake Clark, yeah.
Yes, right.
Yeah,
Blake Clark.
fantastic
I
guy.
worked with him there too, and
Yeah.
he was incredibly funny too. And him and I would walk back and forth to our hotel,
Yeah.
which was about a mile. Wow. Maybe not quite a mile, but it was enough. And he just talked to me the whole time and just and it wasn't quite the Bobby Boucher thing,
Right.
but it was close to it.
Right.
Yeah. But I had a great time with him.
He seems like the type of guy that could just talk and you're just like wanting to listen to what he has to say, just the way he says things.
And some of these guys are a lot older than you think they are because,
Yeah.
when you see them, they're at this point in their careers where they're doing well. But they've been working at it for 20 years, so they're 50,
Right.
And then so now in 2017, they're probably 70 years old.
Sure.
That's maybe why we don't see them anymore
Right.
too much. But
Yeah, it's people think that Kevin.
so
Hart,
by the time he did 50 First Dates, he's probably in his 60s at that point.
Sure, absolutely.
But anyway, I spent a couple of good weeks with him, and that was a lot of fun too.
yeah,
I'm actually
absolutely.
surprised you haven't been in a movie yet. Honestly.
Well, I tried to be in one little movie that they were making called Another Zombie Apocalypse.
But they say you're too tall for something.
No,
some reason I feel like
tell
that
you
fits.
what, a lot of regret on that one because that was nothing happened there.
Yeah.
But Garrett was in that as well.
Oh yeah, that's kind of cool.
Garrett's the actor. He's like he
Yeah.
can do it.
No, we've had Garrett on the show. He's
Right.
fantastic.
There were some things that, I got involved with an agent in Orlando. They were doing a lot of stuff. That's the reason why I went there to begin with, is because when we would travel to L.A. and stay there and try to work out, and you know what? We just hated L.A.
Yeah,
It's a cesspool,
yeah.
and now it's on fire.
And now it's on fire. That's right.
But cesspools do that every now and then.
Hey, you got to burn off the toxins.
Be careful where you throw your cigarette.
That's true.
Did you ever get to perform at the Comedy Store at all?
No, not the
No.
Comedy Store, but the Improv's out
Oh, the
there.
Improv,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Because I was already working for the Improv. So,
Right.
that was the thing. When I walked in, they go, "What do you mean?" I go, "I'm already working for you.
Right.
You might as well give me a shot."
I mean, Improv's still doing pretty decent.
They're still.
I know
Yeah,
Joe
but
Bruce
they're
has
not.
some shows there.
They're not owned by the same.
No.
It's not the same entity. It's not Bud
I
Friedman
was just
trying
gonna
to
say,
put
wasn't
stuff
it Bud
out.
Friedman
No,
originally?
it's
No, I
not
think they're all
that.
Originally.
individual franchises now.
No, the Funny Bone guys came in. They've all got names that would lend you to believe that there might be a little bit of The Godfather, Godfather 2, Godfather 3 involved.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
And so that's the way that went. And I worked for them too. It
Sure.
was just, so it was all good.
Yeah. Scott, I feel like we could just keep talking about you, but we're actually quite at the end here, and the time just flew by.
Thank you.
No, thank you, sir. We really appreciate
No,
you coming
thank
in.
you that it's the end.
Oh, it's the end, yeah. Of course, we expect that from you.
Good
Scott,
God.
anything else you want to plug or anything you want to talk about before we get out of here?
Well, Comedy Off Broadway.
Absolutely.
I tell you what, no matter what happens all over the United States, this club is still the one of the best.
Absolutely. Hands
And
down.
I couldn't be happier or prouder or to be involved with it. I don't know how long that I will be involved with it because sooner or later somebody's going to come in and go, that's it.
Well, I don't know. Jordan's a pretty loyal guy. He's a good guy, a damn
Right.
good guy. And I can't be more prouder for being involved with that particular store. And I'm proud that it's my home store. So, I mean, I
Yeah.
love
Well,
it.
you have one.
Yeah,
and see,
absolutely.
that's what I would say earlier. Is
Absolutely.
that I didn't have one.
Right.
So, it's great. We just try to do the best we can
Yeah.
with what we got. And, parking be damned.
Yeah. And, we've got our open mics that happen there on the first Tuesday of the month, unless it doesn't.
Unless it doesn't. That's
And, there's always big acts coming in. We got Tom Arnold that's getting ready to come in.
You know what?
Henry Cho.
Almost every act is a big act.
That's true. That is true.
Who's coming
Oh.
in this weekend?
Henry Cho.
Henry Cho, big act.
Your
He's-
comedy daddy.
He's my comedy dad.
That's-
Well, here's a guy that, went from being an MC nobody to being a headliner in like a blink of an eye.
And movies. I mean, the guy's been in movies.
And
Yeah.
TV and all
Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you remember the first time I actually talked to you about doing that competition, the bracket competition.
Right.
I had brought somebody to watch that show, and it was Henry Cho.
Really?
And I sat right in the corner, not far from the stage, and after that I said, I'm going to do this. And I emailed you and I said, hey, put me on this bracket competition. You had told me to give it a try, and I had talked about it for you for a while. And you said, Ish, if you don't do it, do it. Don't waste your time. And I'm sure everyone comes up to you and says, I want to do comedy. I want to do comedy. What do
I
do?"
didn't understand a word you said just then.
Yeah, I know. You're just staring at me like, what's this dumbass
If you,
talking
if
about?
you don't do it, do it.
That's
if
right.
you don't do it, do
And
it.
I just watched him, and he's this Asian guy from Tennessee, and I was just like, hey, I could do this.
Yeah,
Why
and
not?
he's smart and funny and
He is.
clean,
He is.
and you know what? He can go anywhere in the world and do whatever it is.
very
I
true.
mean, there may be some places in the world where they wouldn't let him, but
Hey, I'm the same.
North
but
Korea.
he can do everything. And he's a great guy, and it's kind of the way things happened in the '80s
Yeah.
and the '90s. But he was just special, no matter what.
Absolutely.
But he's going to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
still
we're hoping
fun to
he'll be on
stay.
our show as well.
I'd love him if he could be on our show, but make sure you
Well,
guys.
don't count on it.
No, I'm with you. Make sure you guys go out and get tickets to see Henry Cho. He'll be here this weekend, Comedy Off Broadway. And make sure you guys come out to Willie's Locally Known. We've got comedy shows here every Monday.
when
Don't
we got
forget,
the
guys,
finals?
you can catch us on iTunes and Podbean. You can go to Crossroads Comedy Project on Facebook. And you can email us at crossroadscomedyproject@gmail.com.
Maybe one day I'll tell you about the Ninja Stars in Raleigh, North Carolina.
I love that story. Do you want to tell the story real quick?
Do you want me to?
I would love it if you
Go
did.
for
man.
it.
I love
Can
that
we have
story.
time?
Oh,
Yeah, we
hell,
got
if you
time.
got the time, we got the time.
Well, all right. Frankie Bastille,
Oh, there he is. Frankie Bastille.
everyone's most beloved drug addict,
God rest his soul.
and a genius comic, by the way.
Absolutely.
I don't know if those two things go hand in hand. I certainly haven't tried it, but at that time I was still pretty enamored with what was going on.
Right.
But him and I found ourselves in Richmond, Virginia, which they had a great club there in the Shaco Slip down in Richmond, which was a very historic area, and it was like downstairs in Matt's British Pub. and it was a basement.
Right.
It sat like 150, 60 people and that is sardine can. And the beams in the room were only maybe 6'3".
So somebody's hitting his head.
And that was one of the times. That was one of the times that when I just starting out, I was MC.
Right.
And I'd introduce the next guy, and I'd go off stage, and I'd hit my head on the beam going across every time. And so the next time I was there, they put up reflectors so that I would at least be reminded.
And it was because of him. They did.
And
this.
I said, "What the reflectors?" They go, "Well, it's because you. We were
very
scared.
considerate.
We thought you'd concuss yourself every time you come off stage." And so anyway, him and I. This was the first time that I had ever seen anything like this. And this is the mid to late '80s. I mean, it wasn't even the late '80s. It was the mid '80s.
Right.
It was a place called Farm Fresh or something like that, something fresh,
Yeah.
right? And it was a place where you walked in and they had everything. They had groceries, they had clothing, they had tires.
It was Walmart back in the day, before Walmart.
And it was before the Super Walmart.
Right.
And it was astounding. And it was between the club and our condo. So we'd stop there every night. And because they had a deli and they had stuff where we could just go grab something to eat instead of going to a fast food restaurant, which, back then fast food restaurants didn't stay open past,
Right.
midnight.
Right.
And one night we went through there and they had this one table that was like a discount table, and they had a box that said $6 on it. It was just written $6. And inside the box was about 50 or 60 machined ninja stars.
Okay. That's so random.
Yeah. Random's probably a pretty good word for that. But anyway, we looked at it.
I know the story. That's why I'm laughing.
We looked at it. And
Tell
we
us what you
went,
guys bought.
$6.
$6. What a bargain.
I go, I pull out 3. Frankie pulls out 3. We got a box of ninja stars.
I want to know what the hell you guys did with that box.
Oh,
of
you're
stars.
getting ready to find out.
Well, as we went through the weekend, we forgot about them, but they were still in my car. But him and I were going to be doing the next week at Raleigh, North Carolina. So we went to Charlie Goodnight's, and there, and we didn't even remember really that we had them until I went, "Hey, we got the ninja stars," and it was like in between shows on a Friday night. Out front of Charlie Goodnight's was in a little cul-de-sac in the downtown area, right? And beyond that cul-de-sac was a federal prison. And so they had, and then there was railroad tracks too. So there was railroad tracks, fence, area, more fence,
Right.
and then a federal prison.
Right.
But in between those two fences was a billboard that had the Marlboro Man on it.
Oh, okay.
So the thing was to keep ourselves entertained in between shows. Bet you can't hit the Marlboro Man with a ninja star.
Do you know how much of a classic it'd be if we had video of that right now?
Oh, my
And
God.
what we learned was there's about a 30-yard curve on this.
Oh, okay.
So you had to throw it off that way for it to...
So if you're trying to hit a hook shot in golf, right, and you've got to aim it out to the right about 30 yards to have it drop in where you want it to. Right? Plus, you've got to have it, about 40 or 50 feet off the ground when it comes down.
You might be the only
So we
guest
had
in
about
this
60, we had about 50, 60 ninja stars. So it took us about half the box before we even hit the damn thing.
Right.
But once we started hitting it, Well, you got to aim it right out there at that North Star. You got to aim it, and it'll hook back in. And so that's what we did.
But didn't you go back there, like go back to that club a couple years
Well,
later?
no, it wasn't even. It was 6 months later.
All right.
It was 6 months later. I go back out there,
Everyone
and
was
I go
still there.
I go down to the fence, and there's still ninja stars sticking in the nose of the Marlboro
I
Man.
believe that.
Right?
I just wonder how many prisoners escaped from using
But-
ninja
but-
stars.
That was the part we didn't think about.
Right?
That we were actually landing weapons into.
A federal prison.
Like,
Very nice.
it is so funny, though. I can just picture them going, hey, we got a half hour. You got those ninja stars?
Wow, that is like that. It was kind of a weird place because if you're in the club, you could hear.
Right, because of the train tracks.
The train was coming by.
Yeah.
Right, so we had to throw it over the train and into the thing. It was just, and it was just one of those things.
That's a great story.
You know what? And guess what? We didn't get in trouble.
That's
And
even better.
Frankie didn't get in trouble.
Which is
That
a
was,
first.
Right. And Frankie, I didn't have to bail him out of jail.
My God, Frankie
Well,
Best
Scott, I know exactly what to get you for Christmas now.
Ninja stars.
Ninja stars.
And a Marlboro Man. All right, guys, I think we're going to wrap it up on that part. Scott, do you have anything else you want to throw in?
Nope.
All right, Ish, you good?
I'm good.
All right, for Scott Wilson, Ish Shalash, I'm Josh Sardam. You guys have a great night.
See you guys.